But before we return to that conversation, I did want to talk about Just Stop Oil. You will have been hearing in the news bulletins that they interrupted the Pride Parade today, which I was in, and I was pretty much at the point. I was a few stops back from where the interruption took place. And we'd been warned ahead of time that some kind of action might take place. And I was really hoping that there wouldn't be any kind of violence, because I thought, the right-wing media will have a field day with that. You know, if there's two things that they hate right now, it's climate protesters and LGBT people. And if they are fighting amongst themselves and there's some kind of optics on that they can grab, then that's all we will see in tomorrow's papers. So I'm really glad to say that as far as I could work out from where I was, the whole thing went off without a hitch. I mean, we just danced for half an hour to the lovely people at Heart had a playlist that they were playing out of our truck that we were walking alongside, and we danced for half an hour while the protesters sat on the ground and did their protest. And then the parade continued, and I continue to support the message that Just Stop Oil are putting out there. But I know that you will want to hear from them. So we are joined now by Emma Brown, who is a Just Stop Oil spokesperson. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. So my understanding is that there was a statement that was issued from Just Stop Oil this morning saying that Pride wouldn't be targeted, but then this happened. So what changed in the interim?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that Pride is a protest, and that, you know, the whole history of LGBTQI rights has been won through disruptive action. And I think it's perfectly within anyone's rights, especially queer people. These were queer supporters of Just Stop Oil, to challenge and question corporations and organizations. And now Pride is an organization. It accepts sponsorship. It has floats that go past. I was at Glasgow Pride last year. There were hearts that were rainbows from Barclays everywhere. And I'm sorry, but if you paint a rainbow on a turd, it's still a turd. And that is what we're being given by these corporations and by our government that's continuing to license new oil and gas. So that is why it was important for us to show up as who we are, as people who are queer, as people that come from all different sections of society, to say this isn't good enough and that we need to reclaim the power of protest.
I completely hear what you're saying, and this is a point that I've heard made a lot within the community, that companies almost try to absolve themselves of other problematic aspects of their behaviour by sticking a rainbow flag on something and virtue signalling, essentially. So I understand the argument that you're making. I know, and to be clear, this isn't my view, but I know that there are some people who would argue that essentially what you did today was targeting a vulnerable minority, and therefore the optics weren't great for your organisation. What would your response be to that?
Well, I just think, actually, I don't know if you saw the action today, but it was a group of people dressed in the most flamboyant outfits, spraying pink paint from a golden fire extinguisher. I cannot think of anything more Pride than that. So really, it is not about us. Even when we do actions at events, it's about using the cultural capital of those events to spread the message that this is an intersectional fight. There is nothing more intersectional than climate catastrophe, because it affects marginalized people first and worst. If there's anything that we care about, we know it's going to be affected by climate breakdown. We know that it's the richest people that benefit the longest as food prices increase, as energy prices go up. So really, I would say to people, when we target events like these, it's not that we don't love queer culture. It's not that we don't care about sport. It's that we care about those things incredibly. And we want to encourage those organizations to stand up morally for what is right, because especially those organizations that have a history of standing against injustice. I was reading up about ACT UP. I'm sure so many of your listeners know about them, but if they don't, to look into that amazing, radical, very controversial at the time group. And those tactics were roadblocks, were really disruptive things. And the group was formed to get a negligent government to take AIDS seriously. it has such parallels to today. We are trying to get not just a negligent government, actually like a pretty genocidal government in the policies that they are pursuing, to take climate change seriously. And again, it's something where it doesn't matter that we are not scientists. We are listening to scientists just as the ACT UP protesters were doing then, and saying this is now a social justice issue and it needs to be raised in the consciousness of politicians. But also we all need to be kind of taking a look at what more we can do to stand up, to act out and to act up and to refuse to die quietly.
And where are you in your conversations with Pride? Because I'm going back to my first question. It did look like there was going to be no protests, and then that was obviously a decision that was rowed back on. Was that because you didn't get the response that you were looking for from Pride, the organisation?
We haven't received any communication back from Pride, so that was obviously a factor in continuing to go ahead with the action. You know, we are happy if any major organisation really stands up and says, of course, we support what the UN, the International Energy Agency, all climate scientists, you know, every other political party. If other organisations like Pride, like art galleries, like big sporting bodies, just like the British Medical Association have done, if they stand up and speak out and say, we do not support new oil and gas projects because we acknowledge that this is a human rights issue, we will not target those events. And so we're challenging them through love. We're challenging them because we want them to stand up for what is right.
And I was in the parade about 2 floats down from the Coca-Cola bus. And one of the things that I heard was that the protesters were specifically looking to intercept that bus. Is that right? Is there something specific about Coca-Cola as an organisation that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's trying to highlight the fact that similarly to the Chelsea Flowers show, you know, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is organisations coming out against new oil and gas. But obviously where there's an opportunity to call out some of this greenwashing, some of this rainbow washing, we want to do that. Coca-Cola is one of the biggest plastic polluters, if not the biggest in the world. And sticking a rainbow on something ain't going to change that. So we need our governments and, you know, to be tackling these corporate interests, because at the moment, those corporate interests are coming way, way ahead of our ability to survive and to have enough food and water, and to not be drinking polluted water, to not be breathing in polluted air. So there was obviously a reason to target that float, to bring attention to the fact that, like, why are we having Coca-Cola here? Like, this is just an opportunity for them to, as you say, virtue signal and rainbow wash their image. They should be playing no part in it. They need to be going back and having serious meetings about how they tackle their impact on the environment, because it's just got to a stage now, Natasha, where, like, we have to change this. Like, we are at the end of the road. We are really at the end of the road. If we do not tackle, like, these crises together, this holistic crisis, like, we are screwed. So we really need to be looking at what we celebrate, what we allow, like the social capital to exist in our cultural and community spaces, and to speak out and to say, actually, no, you're not welcome here until you sort out your impact, you know, on people and the environment.
Oh, you say that we're at the end of the road. What's next for your organisation?
So we were going to continue. We're going to continue slow marching. And as I said, with ACT UP, they blocked roads. Disability rights activists chained themselves to buses and blocked roads. And at the time, journalists would have been saying to them the exact same things that they're saying to us. It's counterproductive. You're annoying people. But this is the way that social change happens. I'm sorry that it's messy. I'm sorry that it's inconvenient. But really, like, when we look deep into ourselves, I think we could all be doing a little bit more. You know, so I would encourage your listeners to come along and to march with us, to get involved. There's different levels to get involved with. I understand it's quite like a scary thing, but I'm at the point in my life, I used to work in a library, where I cannot just read about this anymore. Like, there's a point where you just think, I might as well try. We need to try, because we know this has worked in the past, and I think it can work again. I honestly do. But we need more people to join in on that. And we need more people to be willing to face because it's not just legal consequences, it's the social ones as well. But we have to do that. We have to be brave. And if there is a future, like, we're going to look back and be like, of course we should disrupt everything, man. This is the lives of our kids on the line. This is the lives of our brothers and sisters. We talk about solidarity. We talk about groups that are, marginalized. There are people all over the world that have done the least to cause this crisis, that are suffering the most. And it is, if we really think about what we stand for as people, what we want to think back on our lives and what we did, I think we need to stand up, even if it's uncomfortable. And yeah, so please visit justopoil.org, sign up for a training. We always maintain non-violence, but I think it's really important that we continue to make this one of the most important things, because if we don't, then all of those other rights that we have fought so hard for, they're not going to mean anything if we don't have food to eat, water to drink, and if we're literally building walls around our countries to stop refugees.
Emma Brown, thank you so much. Just Stop Oil spokesperson there. I wanted to give Just Stop Oil an opportunity to give their side of the story. And I think that she articulated their position really well. And I do think that it's possible to have taken part in Pride today and to be supportive of the protest. And the reason that I know that is because I exist, and I was both of those things. Just a reminder of what we're discussing more broadly this hour. It's